Okay. So I'm here with Kary Zate, who's Director of Marketing, is that right?
Marketing communications.
Marketing Communications at Locus Robotics. And not only are you here you have a stand here?
We do.
But you also in the section here where you have your kit for visitors. So tell me how the show's gone for yourselves.
Absolutely. No, the show's been a very good show for us. It's nice having two stands. We have a nice stand over on the other side where we can have conversations.
The regular stand.
Correct. Yep. And we also have a demonstration area.
Demo area as well, yeah.
And we've always taken the standpoint of seeing is believing.
Right.
Our robots are the kind of robots that folks, once they get a chance to see how they work, they're like kids in a candy store. They just really gravitate towards them, and they realize how easy to use they are, and how valuable they can be to the organization. And you really can't share that unless you see it in person. So,
and if we want to paint a picture of Locus Robotics, where do you sit? Is it in the focused on the fulfillment, or is it in picking, or is it a certain packing line? Can you give us an idea of what your robots are doing and what they're best at doing?
Right. Our robots, we have several different types of robots, but the robots that we have on display here are designed for e-commerce picking in fulfillment warehouses. Right. So you're taking items, for example, that you would order online, whether it's through a third-party logistics or a particular retailer, or in some cases industrial and even healthcare as well, where they're fulfilling the orders for the customer directly, or perhaps fulfillment for a hospital, or for an automotive company, or other elements like that. So we have our bots that travel through the warehouse, helping the pickers themselves pick the items. And so we replace the walking time, the less than valuable walking time, basically unproductive walking time that the worker would have in the warehouse, and giving them the option to pick faster and more accurately than they would if they had to push a heavy cart through the warehouse. One of the wonderful things about it is it not only increases the productivity 2x, but it also makes the work environment that much better for the worker. Worker, instead of walking 16 to 17 miles a day, is now cut down to maybe 10. Right. And they don't have to push heavy carts and so on. Quick side story, we actually had a compliment from one of our sites, as a matter of fact, where a woman who had been picking for years with the company was so thrilled to switch over to the robots that she says, now I can go home and spend time with my family and not be exhausted every day.
Right, right.
And so the workers are really the benefiter of all of this.
And sticking to the topic of robotics, is industry, our companies more open to the investment? Because obviously a barrier has always been the investment and convincing them of the return of investment. So as we move into Industry 4.0 and just digitalization, is it I guess I'm asking you, is your job becoming a little bit easier because of the trends of Industry 4.0 and digitalization?
Absolutely. It is becoming easier, and I would say easier in the sense of more companies are more knowledgeable now about robotics, about automation as a whole. But they're also seeing the value that it brings in general in terms of their bottom line. With the labor shortages being what they are today, and the fact that volumes are increasing for e-commerce particularly, you're seeing a big disparity between the amount of volume that's coming in and the amount of labor that's available. And so the need is there. Typically what we've seen several years ago where folks would look at our robots and say, wow, that's really interesting. What do they do? Now we're getting calls of saying, I understand what they do. Is this the right one for me?
Right, right.
And one of the ways that we've helped mitigate that barrier of getting involved into robotics and automation as a whole is we sell our robots based on what we call a RaaS model, robots as a service. So it's a subscription-based model that allows the companies to get in at a much lower level. So you're buying an employee in the robot on a monthly basis, and so you contract for that. One other factor that it really helps is the fact that during periods of volume increases or seasonal spikes and so on, you can simply add more robots to your account, use them as needed for that spike, and then send them back. So you're not committing all your...
by way of this subscription model.
Exactly.
Right, right.
So you're not committed to a fixed amount or fixed space or anything like that. And so you have a significant amount more flexibility because, as we've seen in this industry, it's pretty much a very, very volatile market. Right. So it can go up and down very, very quickly.
And I'm gonna switch slightly to the e-commerce question on e-commerce. In the pandemic, as far as Europe goes, anyway, the online retailing market was maturing anyway, and it just ballooned during lockdowns. Now I know states in the US, state by state, I know lockdowns varied. So to what degree in the US lockdowns affected e-commerce, I'm not entirely sure about. So my question is, was it similar to in Europe? Because in Europe we had a load of lockdowns, we had a huge boom in e-commerce, and that might be leveling up a little bit now that lockdowns have ended, but e-commerce is still, booming, shall we say. But tell me, did you have that kind of effect all around the country in US, or was it really varying state to state? And B, it must have been a huge opportunity for robotics industries to help digitize and automate that sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I will say is Locus is a global company. So what we were seeing is not only just a US issue as a whole, but we saw it all over.
Of course, so you know what happened in Europe. You know.
Absolutely. In fact, one of our customers, a customer named Boots in the UK,
yes, they're huge.
One of our largest customers, actually started deploying our robots just prior to the pandemic starting. And one of the things that happened when they had that situation with the lockdowns and so on in England, they literally saw their entire business shift from what was predominantly a retail business and a small segment of online, switch completely in this regard. And the robots made such a huge difference that their general manager told us directly that if it hadn't been for the robots, it would have been an absolute disaster for them.
Wow.
And so we started out at the time when we first deployed of 40 robots in their warehouse. We are now well over 200 robots in the warehouse.
Wow.
And their demand is not shifting. They're seeing peak season demand almost monthly. And so the volumes are not going away. I think one of the biggest things that's changed because of the pandemic that has accelerated all the adoption has been the fact that it's so easy to use now. That it's not just e-commerce anymore. You're seeing businesses, for example, doing replenishment to their distribution networks and other elements like that, where folks literally are ordering everything online now. You can get a car online, as well as groceries and other items like that. And so I think the convenience has really changed the map, and the security has gotten significantly better and so on. So I think you're going to see a significant amount of growth in that market for years to come.
And just give me the comparison in the US. Because Europe-wide, as you know, there were lockdowns, and there was a huge boom. Because it's this, e-commerce and online retailing has never been the level as it has been even prior to COVID, as it was in the US. US was the most mature market for e-commerce and online retailing. So just give us an idea of how online retailing and how that affected e-commerce and suppliers like yourself in the US.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same situation. I think it might have been just a matter of scale, relatively speaking, in the US being a little bit larger. So the need for reaction was very, very necessary, and they needed to do it very quickly. So we saw a lot of companies picking up automation very, very fast in the marketplace, and we've seen a huge boom in our markets where we typically don't see one customer saying, hey, let's just automate one warehouse. They literally will start with one warehouse, realize the benefits, and then start expanding. We kind of call it a land and expand approach to our business, because typically when we're dealing with third-party logistics companies and retailers, they have more than one distribution center. And so once they've effectively started using the process of using the automation, they realize the benefits. And again, it comes back to the labor availability. There are certain areas in certain regions of the world, for example, where the labor costs are so low that automation still doesn't quite meet that level that they need to make it appropriate, where now you're seeing markets like that where labor is still just not available. And automation is really the only solution that we have. And so we're seeing a lot of opportunity, both in the US and globally. I'm actually seeing a lot more, I think, in Europe now. The speed, I think, is increasing. We're expanding not only into the European markets. We're in 9 countries now in Europe, but we're also expanding into Asia and Pacific. So we have several deployments that are going on right now as well. So it's very much a global situation.
And you've mentioned hiring and workforce issues. Generally, what did that come? I can relate to that from the UK. We were part of the EU, and we decided to leave. And since we've left, there's always been an issue of workforce issue.
Yeah.
Because it's not so easy for Europeans to come to the UK because there's no freedom of movement because we left the
True.
EU. But so I can relate to that as far as the UK goes, and then obviously the pandemic as well. But shortage of labour in, say, Europe and the US, mainland Europe and the US. Do you know? You must have an idea of why that's become an issue.
Well, I think it's simple that warehouse work is hard. And in most cases, folks, if you think about it, standing on your feet for 8 to 10 hours a day,
Right.
walking 14 to 15 miles a day in the course of a warehouse, it's exhausting.
Right.
I have actually done it as well, and I've only done it for a few days at a time, and I can't imagine doing it as a full-time job. It is very challenging. And so finding workers that are not only willing to stay there, and do that on a regular basis, but you have cost issues for the manufacturers, the distributors, and so on, of recruitment. And recruiting and retaining has become a big issue. One of the wonderful things I think that come out of using our robots is the fact that it's easier to hire people because it's simply easier to train them. I can train you to pick as good as any picker that would be in the warehouse after a few months. You can be on day one picking at the same level that they are. I can train you in 3 minutes to use our bots. The nice part about that is, again, as I said, that workers don't have to walk as much, they're less fatigued and so on, so the retention is easier. So that lowers the cost for the managers and the operations, where they don't have to spend as much recruiting, and they keep their employees longer, so they're able to keep their best pickers. I think the biggest thing happens when you start realizing that you can double, and in some cases triple, the productivity of that individual worker. So let's just say you have 10 workers, for example, in your space that are picking. You can get the productivity out of 20 workers without having to add more workers. And it's not a case of saying we're not going to hire. It's that you don't have to spend as much time and energy finding those people. You can get the most out of the people that you currently have.
Okay, and my last two questions is specifically about the show here. So number one, well, about the show, the brand. So number one, the show here. We're just concluding the second day and last day of the show. So tell me how the show went generally, not just for yourself, but how you saw, what you take away from the show as far as how successful it was for you, but generally how successful it was or wasn't, and what kind of interests or key takeaways that you think visitors took.
Sure. I think overall the show has been really good for us. We've had a steady amount of traffic here, and I think most importantly is not only do we have steady traffic, but it has been very good quality conversations. Right. Folks are coming here with an expressed interest in saying, I need to learn things about the business, the industry, and so on. What's available, what are choices, what are the options, and so on. And so I think folks are really, really interested here. More so than I think I've seen at other shows in the past. I think you've gone from the stage where shows could be sort of a vacation or a boondoggle. We'll wander the show floor, we'll have some fun, we'll go out and have a few drinks.
Yeah.
Now folks are coming here with an express purpose.
Right.
And I think this show is showing that. I think I've seen that in the show circuit in general, because I think after the COVID lockdowns and such, folks are just eager to get out.
Yeah.
And they want to socialize again. So there's an opportunity, I think, for both of that.
Yeah. And finally, the brand is actually not moving. They're still going to have a European presence like they always have, but it's going to be deliver in Americas. So in Las Vegas next year, 2023. Must be a huge opportunity for the brand, but are you looking forward to being involved? Will you be getting involved, and how do you think that will go down in the Americas?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting for us to see it into the U.S. I mean, there are a number of major shows that are already in the U.S., but I think the brand itself has established itself here in Europe, and the recognition of the world seeing all of the situations in terms of autonomous mobile robots or automation in general is a global situation. Yeah. It's not really regional, and I think it's going to be a very exciting show. I'm eager to see how it's going to turn out, and I think folks will really embrace it.
Good. Okay, I think we're done on that.
Okay.